Nancy Gibbons Addison.
May I please have a show of hands for everyone who wants to get up out of the seat they've chosen to move to the other side of the room and sit in a new chair. Wow, we have some brave souls. Many of us don't like change. I know change can be hard for me. In fact, in many times in my life, I've found changing and doing anything of change very challenging. When I was a young mother, I was faced with some really big challenges. My father died when my son was 1 year old of cancer. In fact, he had had a heart attack 10 years prior to that, and then he died of cancer right when one of his grandsons was born, well, and 1 year old. And my grandmother had had heart disease and died when I was young, and so I never really got to know her. Well, I grew up in Texas, and I grew up on fried food and barbecue and all that good stuff that I loved eating. And as I stood over my son's bed that night, and I looked at him, and I thought about my dad, I realized I wanted to see my grandkids grow up. And I had to do some really deep soul searching and think about making some changes. So I did. I went inside and I really did some heavy duty work, and I started changing the way I ate. And at that time, I had been diagnosed with hypoglycemia. I had carpal tunnel syndrome in both hands. I was 50 pounds overweight. And I had had acute anemia all of my life. So I started making some changes, and I started really digging in and doing the hard work that was really uncomfortable. Because whenever we're making changes, we have to go outside of what we know. And outside of what we know can really be hard and scary. And everybody else was eating the same way I had always eaten, and so I was different. And people looked at me very differently. But in 2 years, what I found out was I had lost that 50 pounds in a healthy way, and I'd kept it off. And my carpal tunnel had just disappeared. My acute anemia, it was gone. And my pediatrician looked at me and told me I had the healthiest kids he had ever seen. So now I've become a health counselor, and what I do is I work with people and I help inspire them to make the changes that I made myself. I had a client a couple of years ago come to me, and she had diabetes. And she told me I was her last resort. She had been to the doctor who had put her on a lot of medications, and she had been to a registered dietitian with the same registered dietitian her niece had just gone to, and her niece had just died from diabetes. And she told me as she sat there and cried for an hour that she didn't want to die. And I looked at her and I said, "Do you really want to do this work? I can't do this for you. You have to do it yourself." And she said, yes, I do. This is what I'm going to do. I said, "Great, let's go." So 3 months later, she's sitting there and she's looking at me and she's saying, "I haven't lost any weight. Nothing's happened. I'm still sick. What's going on?" And I looked at her, and I'm going to just call her Jan. I looked at Jan and I said, "Are you really doing what I'm suggesting for you to do?" And she said, "Yes, I am." And I'm like trying to figure out why all these suggestions I've made aren't working. So the next week we get together, and she sits there and she looks at me and she said, I didn't tell you the truth last week. I'd been going home and everybody was eating the same way, and I, thought I was eating better, but you know what? I really wasn't giving 100%. Some changes in our life, they take 100% commitment. And she said that week she had gone home and she had really looked at herself. And she knew that she had lied to herself as well as lied to me. And she went to the gym and she worked out that week. And she went to the store and she bought the food I told her and started making the recipes I'd given her the recipes for. And she had gone and done the things that I had told her to do. And she did it 100%. And she had lost 5 pounds that week. Well, that gave her momentum. And it gave her confidence. And it got her going, really going, so that she could continue that. And within 5 months of starting to work with me, she had been taken off of all of her diabetic medication, and she no longer had diabetes on her medical record anymore. Well, another one of my clients that I had recently was diagnosed with cancer, and he had diabetes. Well, he was cheating and eating candy bars and doing things, and he was like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Well, finally one week he dug in and he did it. And he looked at me and he goes, this week my blood sugar and blood pressure have been better than they've been in 16 years. And I was like, wow. And he goes, you want to know how I did it? I was like, how? He said, I'm an actor. I pretended this was a movie and I'm playing the part and this is what I've got to eat. I thought it was brilliant. Well, all the world is a stage, and all of us in it are actors. Isn't that what William Shakespeare said? And so in our lives, we need to be that actor, and we need to be that part. And when we reach inside and do it, we can find out just how powerful and strong we really can be. Thank you.